So we've seen that the DevOps sometimes are more focusing to the reliability and the scalability and the performance of the systems that we are seeing. And now there is a consideration of the costs that we are seeing in FinOps. So what are your thoughts on this?
Scalability and cost are the same thing, aren't they?
Why so?
Because, so let me backtrack a second, right? I believe that the big part of FinOps is really resource management.
Okay.
I think that it's all about how can we make sure that our resources are not using more than they need, but also not less than what they need. That they're just using just the right amount of resources, right? So if our application uses more or less the exact amount of memory and CPU than it needs, then more, that's how we are reducing costs, right? If our clusters are scaling up and down to provide just enough compute to what we need and not more, that's how we reduce costs, right? So in my head, and I might be wrong because FinOps is not my main area of interest, it's all about the resource management, right? And autoscaling is a big part of that, right? Otherwise, if I cannot scale, so let's say a simple scenario, right? If I cannot scale my application up and down to meet the changes of the traffic and the demand, what am I going to do if I'm not doing that? I'm going to probably set my applications and my servers to use the maximum capacity, the capacity that is equivalent to the maximum traffic I will have. So let's say that right now in the morning I have 100 users and afternoon I have 1,000 users. If I don't scale automatically, then my capacity will be hard-coded to 1,000 users.
Yeah, for sure.
And I will be losing money whenever I have less than that.
Yeah. But do you think, so coming from the DevOps and the practices that I am seeing is that, do you think that DevOps tend to probably overestimate the provisioning or not care that much about probably the base provisioning? And then even though they set up the auto-scaling, which I do, the base provisioning is normally way over provisioning, especially in Kubernetes. What are your thoughts on that?
So base provisioning.
What I mean is like when you deploy the workload and it's more or less stable, do you think that initial estimate could be tends to be over provisioning, or do you think it tends to be like
nobody should ever estimate. Estimating is silly. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money, and so on and so forth. You don't estimate.
Yeah.
At least you maybe estimate first day, and that's it, right? After that, you look at data. You don't estimate, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's just silly. That's how we were doing things 30 years ago, right? I mean, nobody knows. So if I now develop a new application, I honestly have no idea how much memory and CPU that application needs. I have no bloody idea. And I will challenge anybody who tells me that they know in advance how many resources they need. Whomever says that person is lying or is delusional. Nobody knows. And that's fine, because we have now mechanisms to find out. Yeah, we can actually even go further. There are certain things that we can do that will actually help us never need to find out, right? We can, if you're using Kubernetes, right? You have, and I'm not going even to the fancy solutions and expensive ones. Vertical pod autoscaler is part of every Kubernetes distribution. You can use it in a observe-only mode to find out how much memory and CPU your application is using, right? It's not the best solution, but it's a good start. So, estimation, no, fire the person who estimated.
Okay, that's quite a statement. But do you think that from that point, when the application is deployed and when you deploy, you put your requests, I don't know, like by a random value, do you think that there is the concept or the habit to do the right sizing after that? Or do you think that that's a practice that is still to be implemented in the
I don't know.
life
Most
cycle?
of us have bad habits. Most of us don't know what we're doing. Of course, there is a bad habit in everything. You don't need to talk about FinOps. Anything you can mention, and if you talk about, and if you end the sentence with a question, is there a bad habit? Of course there is.
Yeah.
We should just try to remove our bad habits. Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's part of the role. I heard the other day I was talking to an architect that he said, I start with the smallest resource and then start scaling above. I'm not sure if that is the right approach, but I thought it was an interesting one. Start small and grow a bit by bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how we were doing before so, there were 3 phases in software industry, right? One phase is that I don't see what's going on, so I'm making pure random guesses and we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah.
And then we learned, still a long time ago, okay, actually I can observe what's going on, right? I can have something as simple. I'm going to stick with Kubernetes now, but that applies to everything. I can have something as simple as Prometheus, where I'm collecting memory and CPU, and I can just go there once a week, once a day, once a month, a year, whatever the frequency is, go and see how were resources used over time, what's or not, and adjust. And then now we don't even need to do that. We can instruct literally machines and say, you know what? Go there yourself, find out what are the averages, what are the rates, and so on and so forth over a period of time, and scale up and scale down, right? So there is no need for that architect to exist even for that particular task. You just define your applications in a way that they themselves can query databases with data and find out what is it that they were doing and how they were doing and so on and so forth and adjust automatically.